This program brought to you by ACS. Think ahead, create the future, change the world. This is Swipe on Your Money.
Hello, I'm James Daggar-Nickson and welcome to Swipe, the show designed to keep you up to date with all the latest and greatest trends and products in tech. Coming up.
This is really where you start to kind of exceed the competition and delight the customer.
We hear from the global head of design at HP for a close look at their stylish new Folio offering. Plus, we take you to the Swipe testing facility, where this week we'll be reviewing the latest LG Ultrawide monitor. And trust me, it's a big one. But first, it's tech news time. For that, I'm joined by former Facebook ANZ Managing Director and founder of the Digital CEO, Stephen Shearer, and the Australian's tech reporter, David Swan, from our Melbourne studio. There is a lot to talk about this week. First up, though, Google employees furious following reports the company shielded the creator of Android, Andy Rubin, and paid him a $90 million exit package in 2014. That's 127 million Australian dollars after he was accused of sexual misconduct. The latter of which they kept quiet. It must be said, Mr. Rubin continues to deny the allegations. Now, shortly after the report, Google's CEO announced 48 people had been fired for sexual harassment over the past 2 years. Stephen, first up on, I mean, there's been rumours of, perhaps cultural issues out of Silicon Valley. This is not a good look from Google.
No, it's not a good look. I mean, it's symptomatic of the whole Me Too movement. One, it's good to see, companies are coming to grips with this issue in a much more upfront way. But, it's definitely not a good look when you pay out a senior executive in this way and he leaves the company under this kind of cloud. Whether the accusations are true or not, it definitely isn't a good look for Google. What
about in a situation, particularly in a sector where, competition for employees is fierce? And in this kind of world that post-Me Too, where I would have thought these sorts of issues, a lot of prospective employees would be taking on board when looking at, is this the kind of company that I want to actually be working for?
I think that's absolutely true. I think particularly tech businesses are they're in an intense market for competition for talent, right? So they've got a lot of things to weigh up. One, they've got to get the best people in the door. They've got to try to retain them. And then when they leave, they want to make sure they don't go to the competition. I think that's part of the reason why this gentleman's paid out in such a large amount, is to keep him from going to the competition. But, there's contradictions in some of this, right? You've got to make sure that you weigh everything up. And I think if anything, now companies are coming into an age where there's, they've got to deal with these contradictions in a very transparent way.
And more and more aware of, do you think, and this is not just tech, but businesses more broadly, and the leaders of business that you speak to, more aware of perception, like how their actions or how their perhaps lack of actions can be perceived outside of their walls? Absolutely. Perception can be reality now,
That's right? And it's very hard to hide from some of these scandals or budding scandals because of things like social media, where the truth or the perceived truth can come out.
David Swan, it's hard to know whether or not the action itself is as bad or the cover-up. The action, of course, particularly for the people that were involved, it'd be horrendous. But from a corporate perspective, trying to keep this quiet and paying the guy out, it's just not a good look.
No, that's right. And we saw a very similar issue with Uber over the last couple of years, where they had a litany of failures, really, and it was just worse that they tried to keep covering them up, and it ended up costing the CEO his job. We'll see what happens here. I guess one heartening thing maybe is that we've seen a lot of employees speak out, and they've felt able to do so, and they've taken to Twitter and to other social media platforms to voice their displeasure at their own company. So to have a company culture where you do feel like you can have a voice and speak out against your own company is something that's heartening, I suppose.
Well, moving on now, and the company which owns the worldwide hit video game Fortnite has been valued at, wait for it, $21 billion. It's part of a new major investment round. Epic Games announced late last week that investors had purchased $1.25 billion in stock. It already counts China's Tencent and Disney as investors. The video game industry growing and growing fast, with investments in game startups exceeding $4 billion globally for the first time ever, a little bit earlier this year. For context, if it was listed on the Australian market, it would be the 16th biggest stock by market cap. It's extraordinary. gaming is big business.
Yeah, gaming. I mean, this is reflecting really the growth of platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Google. You know, these are global platforms now, and so when you can create these games and these franchises, they can just spread globally so quickly. And you know, the formula is now being cracked by a number of companies, not just in the U.S. but also up in Asia, that are starting to figure out, you know, how do you build these games and scale them really quickly.
And you can see the investor interest. KKR coming on board, that's a huge private equity firm. Tencent already on board. Walt Disney on board.
Hats off to Walt Disney and Tencent for getting in early. It's a prescient move.
It's extraordinary. Do you play? Have you played Fortnite, David?
I have. I was no good, and it was once or twice, and I decided to get off. It's not fun being yelled at by 10-year-olds, and I'm more skilled at older games, I think.
Your thoughts on just the rapid acceleration in gaming? I mean, there's live sports now when it comes to gaming as well, which is becoming increasingly popular, and is becoming more and more mainstream.
Absolutely, and I think finally we're starting to see the realization that gaming is more popular and more valuable than movies, than music. Gaming is this real behemoth, and it's not a flash in the pan, it is here to stay. Fortnite I thought might be a fad, but it's really not. It's really stayed in the public consciousness, and people keep playing it. And I think video games are only going to get obviously more and more important to broader society.
Just before we move on, top video game for you at the moment?
I've been enjoying a bit of Spider-Man. I think that's a really fun game. Red Dead Redemption 2, which just came out last week. And can't go past Rocket League, which is one I'm actually not bad at compared to Fortnite.
Whatever happened to Mario Kart?
You got too much time on you.
Yeah, I was going to say. We're talking to one mate of his, Matthew Dunn, who's played in one stretch 12 hours straight of video gaming. You start bleeding from the eyes after a few hours, I would have thought.
Yeah, it's addictive.
Moving on, Australia's Electronic Spy Agency chief has revealed that the nation's new 5G network could have been threatened if Huawei had been allowed to build it. Mike Burgess telling a forum in Canberra last night that he had advised the government against using the Chinese vendor, as future communication systems using IoT tech could not be protected. The federal government decided to bar Huawei from supplying equipment to Australia's 5G network back in August. But how does this decision potentially impact our relationship with China? It is an ongoing issue, this, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this was reflective of what's happened in the U.S. and Europe. You know, there's a rising concern about particularly Chinese electronics manufacturers putting in big pieces of infrastructure, and now that we're moving to things like 5G networks, this infrastructure becomes more than ever
because this is critical infrastructure, right?
It's critical. It links into transportation, electricity grid, Internet of Things. So it's not a trivial thing to be taking on these kind of component manufacturers. But I think what it raises a really interesting question is this arms race we're coming into now around artificial intelligence, advanced electronics, and the Chinese are formidable players here. This is no longer the China we knew a few years ago.
Well, this is a stated goal of theirs, isn't it?
Absolutely.
If you look at China 2025, I think it is, they see themselves as a leader in this.
Not only do they see themselves as it, but they're putting the investment into educating, bringing out the scientists and the people they need from the university systems to make this happen. So it's a full court press that they're doing to put AI at the top of their agenda and become the AI powerhouse of the world. The
likelihood of it happening, in particular, when you've got the US, which you'd probably have to say is the leader. I mean, we can almost get into some of the at-heart issues of the trade war. IP is certainly front and center with the US and China, but I think both countries see this as, I suppose, the economic pillar of the future, and both want to be the leaders.
Indeed, and you just said that the U.S. is a leader in AI. Some would argue that China is further ahead in many ways, particularly in some of the fundamental research that they're doing. So, you know, we're entering in a different era now, where Silicon Valley has been dominant for a long time. It's not going to go away tomorrow, but the rise of China in technology is something that we've got to come to grips with. In a country like Australia, now, what's the role? Do we partner with? Do we compete with? What's the right mix?
Is it a difficult, well, it is obviously, it's a difficult issue because while they are going to be leaders, and certainly the amount of investment dollars they're putting in would suggest they'll continue to be leaders, but there are issues around security. The idea of a command economy, a centralized communist-led government, the idea that anything they're involved in could have sort of backdoor access.
Yeah, certainly there's the way the Chinese government involves itself in business and in the security issues and the privacy issues of its citizens is different to what we're used to in Western democracies. And indeed, we're going to have to come to grips with, how does that play into our own systems and democracies and economy, and what suppliers do we trust and not trust to actually build part of this critical infrastructure.
David Swan, you get the sense that this is going to be an ongoing issue, in particular, well, for everyone, but for Australia in particular, it's this sort of fluctuating relationship and I suppose views as traditional versus future relationships between the likes of China, the US and the UK.
Yeah, exactly. And it is hard to know exactly how pivotal this one decision is. What are the flow-on effects? What sorts of other things come into play here? It is quite a crucial decision that the Australian government has made. But if it's big in isolation, or if that then leads to other unintended consequences, I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, I suspect there are going to be plenty of more tough decisions in the future. And look, just finally, Apple, in just a matter of hours, sent to launch a whole new range of products in Brooklyn just days before their quarterly results. Just last week, I think we were talking about, have we seen peak Apple as far as the iPhone is concerned? David Swan, I know you'll be covering this one closely. What should we be watching out for? What's going to be hot?
So we're probably going to get, so this is all pure speculation at this point, we're still a few hours away, but we'll likely see a new iPad, a more powerful, faster iPad. We'll likely see a new range of MacBooks too, and potentially some new software updates to boot as well.
Stephen, just finally, a thought from you on, we obviously on the channel cover a lot of market volatility. The big tech stocks have been the ones that have led the rise. There've been huge share price appreciation. They've been rocked to some degree. Some questioning about whether or not, particularly for Apple, the sales momentum, the beast that has been so successful, can it continue? Does it need to start seeing new revolutions as far as products are concerned?
When you get to the size of Apple, you've got one big problem is how do you keep up your sales momentum, and unfortunately, they haven't had another hit product, another hit category product for some time now, the iPhone being the last one. So they're searching for that next one. Some are saying, is it a TV? Is it the connected home? Is it a car? And it's got to be something if Apple's going to keep up the momentum. A lot of its share price is founded on what the growth expectations are in that stock, and if that growth doesn't keep up, that stock could suffer.
All right, Stephen, Sheila, David Swan, pleasure as always. Thank you very much for your time today. Thanks, guys. We're going to take a break. When we come back, a look at the stylish new HP Spectre Folio, I should say. Stay with us.
And now, more Swipe on Your Money.
Welcome back. Well, HP has unveiled the Spectre Folio, a new device that it says sets a bold standard for premium PC innovation. They haven't been shy in their ambition, setting out to what they say is reinvent every aspect of the PC, from the materials used to build it to the experiences it can deliver. Well, to find out just how they went, I headed over and had a look. Stacey Wolf, really appreciate you joining us today. Some beautiful looking computers here. Well, you set yourself a high standard. What the ambition was to reinvent the PC. Where do you even begin?
Well, it's really getting one with the customer. For us, we continue to build out our Spectre line, and the Spectre line is the most premium line that we have within HP. And for us, we really wanted to achieve a new level of experience, and that's really what's captured in the Spectre Folio.
And do you start with the consumer? Is it right, here's what we think the consumer wants, or is it here's what we think we can do in a brilliant sort of design conception?
It always is with the consumer. We spend a lot of time on consumer insights and really understanding what that consumer wants and needs. We look at opportunities to kind of, address those unmet needs, and the Spectre Folio really does that in our lives. We tend to call it one life, because we have the consumer life and we have the professional life, but really they're not two, they're one.
And so the idea being it straddles both. I was going to ask, I mean, who's after this? I mean, they're beautiful. I imagine they come with a nice price tag as well. So when you're designing these, when you're putting these together, who's in your mind? Who are you actually building them for?
It's the consumer that really wants no compromise. They want to have everything, whether it's touch or pen or the connectivity, all of those pieces that are really necessary in our lives today. That's what they demand, and that's what we're delivering.
And what about the aesthetics? How important do you think they are when it comes to what the consumer wants? And I imagine that must be where the exciting part for you as well.
It is. It really allows us to embrace one's lifestyle. So for us, aesthetics is key. It is what we invest a huge amount of time in, because as these products become more personal, it's more important about that personal expression. So whether it be the color of the material or actually the material itself, as we've done in the Spectre Folio.
Yeah, talk us through that. I mean, what are some of the, from your perspective, some of the key design initiatives that are coming on board with the Spectre Folio?
Sure. So with the Spectre Folio, one of the most important things was to deliver a material that kind of changed the paradigm. In the past, it was always measured by aluminum.
Yeah.
Aluminum, we see that day in and day out, and that's really, to some degree, the gold standard within premium. What we've looked at is, how do we change the game and deliver a material that has the same kind of, I'll call it, emotion and desire, but delivers new functionality, and that's what we've captured within the Folio. Just as simple as that, I can go from a media mode back into a notebook mode, and then with that same motion, I can go all the way down into tablet mode. So what it really is addressing is the multiple different positions that we see ourselves in, whether we be on a plane or at home resting on a couch. We have different needs, and that's what Folio addresses.
It's hard not to notice as well the material that you're using on these. I mean, is these leather?
It's genuine leather. We spent a lot of time, it's funny, our designers now probably could make you a wallet or a handbag. We spent so much time in understanding the material, the properties of the material, because we wanted to be true and honest to kind of that heritage that is part of that material. And everything that you see here is created in a brand new process that we had to develop, because as you can imagine, no one makes leather PCs, and we had to go develop the sourcing and the manufacturing to basically create this.
So come up with an idea of what you want and then work backwards as to how you're actually going to achieve that.
Yeah, I would say that we almost tried to leap ahead of what we targeted as far as a production date. So this has been 2 years in the making, and I think we had a 5-year vision to say, what could we possibly do? What is the craziest thing we could do? And we really started our journey with no vision of the end, because no one had ever done this before. And we developed each piece, and it's a milestone after a milestone, but we've developed something that's quite unique.
And in that environment then, in that creative environment, I mean, what are some of the key guiding principles that you guys work towards at HP when it comes to design, and when it comes to actually finally, after a multi-year process, releasing products like this?
Sure. Well, it's back to the customer in mind. It really is about no compromise for that customer. Every time that we saw kind of a barrier where something had to be compromised, we would pause, we would go and study it and find new opportunities and solve that problem. We didn't want to disappoint. It's a premium product, so it had to be perfect in every way.
Must be pretty exciting from your perspective.
It is very exciting. You know, it's one of those things that I tell people I need a long winter's nap after this one. So it's a very, very lengthy exercise. But the product itself, we've just had a super positive reaction to it. One, because of the material, of course, but number two is it's doing things that other products fell short on.
And something you mentioned to me off camera before the interview, the idea that everything you've done has led up to this. Just explain that, because I think that's an interesting sort of aspect to focus on, is the evolution, if you like, as you go through the design.
Sure. So for us to get to this point, you had to kind of think through the complete solution within this premium segment. So whether it's a 360 that we have in the back, which is a traditional transforming PC, we set that as a baseline, but we wanted to go further. We wanted something that was far more fluid in its adaptability. So it is an exercise that's multiple levels. So it's a material, so from a color material standpoint, brand new. From a mechanical standpoint, completely new. And then more importantly, as we start to talk about new technologies, this is the first 4G gigabit solution. So when you talk about LTE, that's a completely new component. And when you have something that is actually now encased in leather, you have magnesium plates that are in here that lighten it. You have a battery that's 70% of the form factor to deliver 18 hours runtime. This is really where you start to kind of exceed the competition and delight the customer.
I've got to ask just finally, Stacey, when you mentioned you didn't exactly know where you're going to end up when you started the journey. It better than what you'd hoped?
It is. It's one of those things that, you know, what's the most rewarding is certainly the product, but equal to that is actually the journey we went on. It's amazing how within the company, what started as maybe just a few folks as a mission became a company-wide, I'll call it journey. It was one that we all went on to kind of not just solve the problem, exceed it, and deliver something that set basically the industry anew.
I've got to say, from an aesthetics point of view, they're absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Stacey, we do appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we'll take you deep inside the Swipe testing facility and run the ruler over LG's latest ultra-wide monitor.
We'll be back with more Swipe on Your Money. And now, more Swipe on Your Money.
Welcome back to the program. Well, we love gadgets here at Swipe, arguably to an unhealthy extent, but until they cut us out of here, we are going to continue to showcase the best, the worst, and the why bother that tech has to offer. Now, deep in the bowels here at Swipe HQ is the Swipe testing facility, the STF. Not unlike the famed Ponds Institute, it's a sterile environment filled with important people in important white coats. This is where the gadgets are put through their paces so you can make questionably informed purchase decisions. You're welcome.
Oh, I didn't see you there. You've caught me unawares watching one of my favourite television shows. The reason we're here, though, is what we're watching it on. This is the brand new LG Ultrawide monitor, just released here in Australia. Not cheap. We'll get to the price tag a little bit later, but the first thing that grabs you, well, I hope it grabs you, it's a little bit difficult sometimes to tell through the television, is the size of this thing. They're not joking when they call it the ultra-wide monitor. The other thing I like outside of the size of it, and we'll talk a little bit later about some of the good things that you can use it for outside of your favourite television shows, is the way it looks. The thin bezel, which is a particular favourite of mine. You can see the very thin outline as far as the monitor is concerned. I've never been a big fan of the big fat bezels, borders, as far as televisions or computer monitors are concerned, and the LG does a great job in terms of that stylish finish with that thin bezel. The other important factor to note as well when it comes to the look of the monitor is the stand. Look, it's a nice stand. It's not a beautiful stand, but it certainly does what you need it to do. So other than the front of the computer, which I particularly like, the width of it, of course, as well as the stylish look of it, the back just as nice. They don't really get to see the back very often, but trust me, it is nice, glossy white finish, and importantly, plenty of optionality in terms of inputs and outputs with the LG Ultrawide monitor. Now, lots of functionality, beautiful looking computer monitor, but as is often the case, a lot of these decisions is going to come down to the cold, hard cash. And on that front, I'm afraid the LG Ultra-Wide monitor, it is not cheap. It comes at the upper end, the pointy end, if you like, of expensive. It's going to set you back about $2,500. There's a couple of competitor models, similar sort of look, cheaper from the likes of HP and Dell. So there is alternatives on the market, particularly for a lesser price point. But if you're lucky enough to not really be worried about how much it's going to cost you, you can't really go too wrong with the LG. On the swipe score, 3.5 swipes.
I should mention that's out of 5 as well, by the way. That is Swipe for this week. Look, you can watch us anytime on 9 Now, Foxtel Go, and on the catch-up section of yourmoney.com.au. I'm James Daggar-Nickson. Have a good night.
This program brought to you by ACS. Think ahead, create the future, change the world.